10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us?
I just want to take a moment to introduce this as the most awkward podcast ever. Because Jonathan had this idea that we would videotape ourselves and put it on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
And it might not work.
It might not work. We'll see.
But we're
We'll
all
see.
looking at each other. Like I can see myself right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not used to that.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I keep wanting to look at it and check my hair.
Right.
Raise your eyebrows at yourself, apparently.
I stopped checking my hair a long time ago. So
What I had to do is make sure it was just from the waist up. Because I don't know, do you do this? When you cross your legs, do you have to cross your legs like a man? Because crossing your legs like a woman is so much easier. Right? See? Like I just put one leg over the other. I don't have to do this whole...
No judgment, man. It looks sophisticated. It looks kind of English.
Does it? All right.
Yeah, kind
Oh my gosh. How many minutes is this in? Should we start over? Now you've made it the most awkward podcast ever. Talking about your man cross.
Yeah, that's true. All right. I guess I'm just too old to care at this point.
That's good.
But not so old that I want it videotaped for 40 minutes.
I'm with you. We'll give it a
Okay,
shot.
so
Exciting.
so our podcast today is called Counting to One. That may make no difference to you, but hopefully by the end, you'll realize that in God's economy, all He's asking you to do is one thing, and that's count to one.
Right.
You don't have to do everything. You don't have to be in charge of everyone. You just have to count to one. Okay? And I'm going to start like this.
Okay.
Who does the taxes in your house?
Matt, for sure.
All right.
TurboTax.
He turbo taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan?
Yep. I guess we're sponsored by TurboTax. I also use TurboTax. I put the numbers in. It's like a game. It feels like I'm like playing a little game, and I've always won at the end. I always come out ahead with money.
I think it's quite a stressful game. Matt's like, stop looking at the number as it changes, but it's up and then it's down and then it's up, and
we
so are my
make
emotions.
jokes the whole time through it. Like, oh man, what are we gonna do with our $10,000? We're not getting $10,000.
We're like, oh, we put in our kids. We're going to make money. Oh,
Right.
we put in.
Oh, I'm in charge of mine,
Yeah.
but I don't TurboTax it. It's too complicated for that. So
Right.
I have a guy, and
Yeah.
it stresses me out, though. Like even the going and the collecting and all that stuff, I just
Right.
get all geared up. And I have it worked, so I'm going to get money in the end.
Yeah.
I just, because I can't stand it. Like I had years. Have you ever had that year where you were owed
Yes.
$5,000?
Not $5,000
Yeah.
for me. It was I was young and like single and didn't have any money, and oh yeah, you owe $600. And that was like, what? I'm supposed to be getting like 12 back. You know,
Somebody, my friend, just said, I just got my taxes, $14,000.
Oh, my gosh.
That's what he owed.
Owed $14,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
painful.
it's the worst.
It's like a lot of business people, like people who own their own business, I feel like.
Yeah, that's probably true. And that's when I got myself when I was a house painter.
Wow.
So I think there are three types, right? There are the people that do it themselves.
Right.
There are the TurboTaxers. And then there are the people that gather everything and give them to somebody.
Okay.
Oh, actually, there's a fourth. And Leslie, you are in this group.
Yeah.
It's the lazy people who do nothing, and their spouse does it every year. My wife is in this group.
Wait,
I literally said one time, like after Matt and I had been married a few years, I'm like, I think I really did it right. I went from my parents doing my taxes straight to my husband doing them. I never had to figure it out on my own.
Wait, though, I have to ask this question. Were you like 80% sure that I didn't do my taxes?
Almost positive that right? Didn't you
You're
think
like,
Sandy
Sandy
does
I
it?
thought maybe Sandy might have. I really did.
Oh man,
I
that's
did.
funny.
We found a responsibility that Jonathan has. So I guess the reason why I wanted to start off like this is I'm pretty much not a math head anymore. Like I don't know, I was never really great at math, but I've kind of had to give up all of that. Like once my son reached 3rd grade, I could no longer help him with his math.
Yeah.
And just say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'll pray for you. That was
They
my
did
response.
change the math though, so
Yeah,
that's kind of not fair.
I guess so.
Right.
Yeah, it's different now.
But with God's economy, He really just asks us to count to one.
Okay.
Right? We have a statement at our church, and it's our mission statement. We boiled it because everybody has a mission statement. Nobody can remember it. So we made it 4 words. Mm-hmm. So you can't forget. Actually, the only person who really forgets it is Chad. It's about the one. It's 4 words. And he makes it, it's all about the one.
Right.
So I guess
now 5 words.
Yeah, he can't even count to 4.
Right.
There's a moment in Jesus' life when he talks about math. He says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and he eats with them. Okay, here's the context. Who are the people that Jesus is hanging out with?
Tax collectors and sinners.
What would they look like today?
They got tattoos.
Tattoos. Everybody has a tattoo.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry.
Kidding.
I'm sorry,
kidding.
tattoo people.
That's like, if anybody doesn't know, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I've got to figure this out because I just got a text message from my daughter that she has pierced her nose.
I saw those
and
text
not on the
messages.
side.
Right.
In the middle.
Yeah.
And so I sent her a picture of a bull with a ring through its nose.
Yeah.
I guess there's probably a lot of people that prejudge people with tattoos or prejudge people with a lot of piercings or what have you. But these would be the people, I guess I would go, drug users and, Raider fan, right?
Yeah.
People that you wouldn't necessarily normally trust, at least in Jesus' day. Those are the people that he was hanging out with.
Right.
And this is how he responded. He told 3 stories, right? The first was about a lost sheep.
Okay.
Right? There's a shepherd out there. He's got 100 sheep, loses one. What does he do?
Goes after the one.
Right? Forget the 99. I'm going after the one. Next is a woman who's lost 10 coins, or has 10 coins. She lost 1. What does she do?
Tears her house apart.
That's right. It's probably, a coin is, what, a day's wage?
Yeah.
Or it could be more.
Yeah, depending on the coin. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of money. Not only does she tear her house apart, but when she finds it, she tells all of her neighbors and she celebrates that she found a lost coin.
Spins her coin on a party.
Right. What's the third story?
Lost son.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a son that's home. He's faithful.
Right.
But he goes out after that one. Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like God is telling us a couple of different things in here. One, the question that we have to ask ourselves is who are you hanging out with?
Right.
And who's most important? All right? Okay, let's take a step back as far as who are the important people. Because Jesus hung out with tax collectors and sinners. I remember dropping Riley off, my oldest son, off at UCLA.
Okay.
And the day that we dropped him off, all of the clubs were out. Here are the clubs that you can join. I am not making this up. The University Buddhist Association, the Sahaha Meditation Group, the Baha'i Club, the Thaklian Muslim Association, the Latter-day Saints Student Association, the Poker Club at UCLA, and the gun-toting, drug-smoking partiers from hell. Okay, I made up the last one. But that's how I felt, right? As I'm walking through, these are the people. And when he was going to college, I was thinking, man, I wanted him to go to Biola, where I went, the Bible Institute of Los Angeles. I wanted him to have these choices: the Bible Club, the Missions Club, the Feed the Homeless Club, the Bathe the Elderly Club, right? Nice kids, good haircuts. And I sent him off to college to hang out with those people. And there was a lot of fear inside of me. So the conversation has to start with, who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to spend my time with? And this isn't just an easy open and shut case.
Right.
Okay, well, Jesus hung out with tax collectors and sinners, so that's who I'm going to hang out with.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Leslie. Share some thoughts.
No, Jonathan, I was saying earlier, Jonathan said this, which he actually told me he stole from somebody else. But I've been quoting Jonathan, so let's go with him. Anyway, he said in a podcast not that long ago that you are the sum of your 5 closest friends, essentially. And I've thought about that so much recently because I have said before, but I love people, and I love hanging out with all people, like people that I run into at my kids' school and people that are on my kids' soccer teams or whatever. I enjoy spending time with them, but not all of those people my morals necessarily align with. And I still enjoy spending time with them and getting to know them and investing in them and or relationships with them. But I wouldn't consider just any random person my like core 5 group of people. And I feel like my core 5 group of people has to be the ones who align with me in terms of who I believe in, who I believe whose I am, and what like our family standards and morals and values are. Otherwise, if I turn some of those people who maybe don't have the same, that are not on the same page as I am, into my closest friends, then it's going to be easy for those lines to be blurred about what I think I believe or who I, all of that. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, for me, I feel like that's the difference. I love loving on people regardless of who they are or where they are. But I can see people that I want to not be
I feel
so
like
close with.
I feel like there's a need for an elevated belief in influence and the power of influence. Because a lot of times we're just like, nah, these people aren't influencing me. And we would think, I'm not really influencing these people. And if we elevate it and we realize, no, every single person, that's just the human nature of when people interact with people, they rub off on each other. You will start to talk like the people you spend time with. You'll use the words they use. You'll wear the clothes they wear. You'll start eating the foods they eat. It really is. That's how people work. That's how communities build. And when we understand that, now we can be intentional about who we're spending our time with, because now we're saying, okay, in this relationship, I'm going to rub off on them and they're going to rub off on me. So if I'm going to go to these people, these tax collectors and sinners, that's a great thing because I'm going to rub off on them and I'm going to be able to affect them. But at the same time, the same is true is if I only go to tax collectors and sinners, then they will rub off on me. And they're going to take me down.
It's so funny. I just thought of when you said that. This is really random. But I was walking into our kids' school this morning, and this mom saw me, and she said, "Oh, my gosh, looking at you, it just made me remember I have to sign up for VBS. You're like a walking billboard. When I see you, I just remember, shoot, I didn't sign my kids up for VBS yet."
Did you say, "Oh, well, have a great day"?
No, I didn't. No, and they're not people that regularly come to our church, but it made me think of that, of people that are in a semi-close acquaintance bubble of being in Scripture Ranch or at my kids' school or have attended VBS in the past. If they just see me, that's what they associate me with.
Absolutely.
Canyon Springs, 1, and 2, like their children's vacation Bible school week.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you think about that in terms of influencers. Like every conversation that I'm potentially having with somebody who is, I don't know, whether or not they attend Canyon Springs or believe in God or anything, that is the lens at which they're probably looking at me through, which I've never thought of before until she said, "You're like a walking billboard," to remind me.
Yeah, we had that, when we were doing youth ministry, Sandy and I, we were doing youth ministry, and we're, I don't know, late 20s at the time, and there was a moment of realization where we were just kind of shocked by this thought. Wait a minute. These kids look up to us the same way we looked up to our youth pastor. Like that we didn't put that together.
Yeah.
That didn't work in our heads. And then we realized, because we just thought, no, we're just normal people hanging out with normal people. And there was so much influence going on there. Like,
I don't think that I really ever stopped to think of like, I'm an influencer, but it's true. Like you're getting and receiving.
Right. All the time.
And giving all the time. Yeah.
One of the first, there was a couple that I met, just started the church, and I walked up to their table. We're meeting them there. They got there first.
Right.
And I came down. They had a couple of drinks in front of them.
Yeah.
I swear, very first words out of their mouth. These are non-alcoholic.
Yep.
So here's where I'm having a hard time. I get it.
Right.
Like for my whole life, I've been told only hang out with good people. And there are verses that say bad company corrupts good morals.
Right.
I get all of that. So what do I do with this? And how do I draw the line? I mean, I feel like there are high school kids that'll go, yeah, Jesus hang out with tax gatherers and sinners. That's why I'm going to this party.
Right.
And that's a really terrible decision.
Right.
But I also feel like there are a whole bunch of Christian people out there that this is who they know. They know their church people,
right,
and they know the people in their small group, and they know the people they hang out with in the parking lot of their Christian school.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
And it feels like there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
How do you draw that line?
Yeah, I think that there's a need for being. I feel like it's both. I mean, I feel like we can get on one side or the other. You know, I mean, having grown up in the church and being around the church people a long time, a lot of times the church people are not the people I'm drawn to spend my time with. And so I feel like it's important. Like, one of the best things in the world for me was when I got out of high school. Like, there was all these church kids in high school. Didn't spend any time with any of them. Went to youth group, but none of them were my friends. And then when I got out of high school and I went to Bible college, I was in a room I had 5 roommates, and all these guys that were just on fire, living for the Lord. And that season of my life, the amount of growth that came because of those relationships, I'd never had anything like it. And so I feel like both are important, and I feel like that's part of the adventure, is that we get to go into we get to live a real life.
Right.
We get to be around normal people. We get to do real stuff. You know, it's
right.
like, it's not all church. There's so many other things that we might pursue. Your kids might be in soccer. You might have a hobby. You might do a thing. And the people who are there, that's your opportunity to influence them. But I think at the same time, it's also a discussion on the importance of regular fellowship, of staying connected to a community of believers.
Yeah.
Because you will stop altogether.
And I think too, like, I would imagine on like a college campus or in high school, it's probably harder to have that boundary. But at least for me in my life, and I don't know what it's like when your kids get older, but it is very like organic that I would see a mom all the time or see a dad and I might know that every weekend they spend all their money on sitters and drink and do drugs, like on their weekend in their free time. Like, I might know that, or I might know that they like have cheated on their spouse, whatever. I might know that information. That doesn't mean that I'm like, sorry, you're out. Like, you're not in what I believe, so that's out.
Right.
There's still a very natural time that I could be walking down the ramp at school and they could share some information about something that was hard, or their mom that was sick, or how their kitchen's being renovated and they don't have any food. And it would be very easy for me to either like lend a hand, like, oh, hey, I can bring you a meal, or is there something I can do to help, or do you want me to pick up your kid one day? Right. Or even just the next week following up, like, how's that going, or what happened, and all those things I feel like are ways that I'm naturally loving them, but I'm not entering into their, okay, I'm going to go party and hang out with them. I don't know. Maybe that's harder in college, but I feel like, and I guess maybe I'm not necessarily going to, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to know them on this most intimate level. At that level, I can only gather what they are willing to divulge to me, essentially.
Yeah, well, I guess the issue is it's just very nuanced, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So I heard a story. A kid goes off to college, and when he goes off to college, he's got a couple guys in his face. Hey, join Campus Crusade, and we're all a part of this fraternity. We're trying to turn this fraternity for Jesus.
Right.
What a great opportunity, right?
Right.
So he dives in. Well, let me tell you something. The fraternity won in that case.
Right.
And realized, pretty soon, a couple years in, man, that was a big mistake.
Right.
So how do we tell people, reach out to the next one, but those can't be your main influencers in your life.
Right.
Is it as easy as that?
Well, like, 2 thoughts come to my mind. One, I absolutely love the fact that, in a sense, Jesus joined the fraternity. I mean, like, he went all in. So the first thought is, but he was Jesus. You weren't going to, you weren't going to trick him. You weren't going to, get him to a point where he's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm in, guys. Pour me another one. Like, that wasn't going to happen. But the other thing I think is this need for boldness and this need for, like, I think one of the things that we've done, this generation of Christians, if you compare almost across the board, this generation of Christianity, and this is fine. This is what God's doing right now. This is fine. But if you compare this generation of Christianity to the Apostle Paul, Peter, John, Jesus, all those, like, we are wimpy. Like, we're going into, like, Jesus was teaching in a room filled with tax collectors and sinners the crazy things of God, blowing their minds with the things of God. And they were drawn to his grace, his mercy, his presence, his person. But,
and on the other hand, he was going into the temple, and those people were worse because they're trying to kill him.
Yeah,
right,
yeah, right. But what I look at is like, I don't know, man. It's a whole lot harder to get me to kind of change my position if I'm going in hardcore with purpose and boldness. And I know, because I remember there's this time I'm working at this retail store, and I don't know, I'm like 6-7 years out of high school, and these guys from high school showed up, and I was never in the party scene in high school. And these guys come in and they're like, "Hey, Johnny, what's up, man? We haven't seen you in forever." And I was like, "Yeah, what have you guys been doing? You guys see anybody?" And they tell me, who the people are that they're still hanging with. And they're like, "Matter of fact, we're getting a group of us together." And I know what they're all doing. The same thing they were doing in high school. They didn't go anywhere. And so, yeah, we're all getting together at Evan's house. And they're like, "You should come down, man. You should see everybody." And I go home. I was married. I think we had Josiah at the time, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I go home, and I told Sandy, I was like, "Hey, you ran into these guys from high school? I haven't seen them. There's a big party that they're going to have. I'm going to go." And then she's like, "Okay, what time are you going to be back?" Like, it was like no big deal, because she didn't have any fear whatsoever.
Right.
And I showed up, and I went to the party, and I'm walking around running into people, and it was amazing. It was incredible. I mean, a lot of them were drinking. There was a couple who were pregnant, so they weren't drinking. He wasn't drinking because she wasn't drinking. And here I'm just literally just in the room with all of these people and just hanging with them, people I had known. And I remember Evan was just drunk as all get out. He's the one whose house we were at. And Evan's like, "Johnny, I know I'm not doing right, man." And he's
confessing to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this guy, Alex was there. And I was just like, "Dude, what have you been doing for the last 6 years?" He's like, "Man, drink a lot of beer." And he's just kind of filling it in. We got the couple who she was pregnant, and so Chris was not wanting to drink because she wasn't drinking. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Man, I always saw something different with you." And you just being in the room, but holding to your values.
So here's how I'd push you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, well, Jesus would be in the fraternity.
Right.
You got to live in the fraternity.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Year 2,
right.
You got to live in the frat house.
Yeah.
And Jesus didn't do that.
No.
Jesus had 12, and he had 3 guys who were really close.
Yeah.
And the Apostle John would say he's number 1.
Right.
right. Right. So I think maybe there's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, I don't believe. I'm going to make a statement. You tell me if you agree with this. I don't believe I'm a moral, upstanding person because I have such amazing self-discipline.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
I believe that I can be that kind of person because I allow the people that are the major influencers in my life to be good, positive influencers in my life. Right. And I'm involved with a lot of people.
Right.
Have the opportunity. And those are the people I love. Quite honestly, if you wander into our church, I think I've been criticized for this, but I love the new person and I love the person that's far from God. Right. They're like my favorite.
Right.
But they're not the one, like I'm not doing what they're doing or partying how they're partying.
Right.
I'm coming home to my wife and I'm hanging out with my, the people that are really going to make a difference. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Isn't that the line?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I do think that there's opportunity. I mean, we had Randy Waynick on, and for him, he's just going and hanging out with homeless people who've been through some stuff, and he is a light in that environment, right? I mean, he's able to go into those places. But you're right. I mean, it's recognizing, like you say, you don't live there. It's one of the things that I see in my oldest son is he determines the direction. And that's one of the things that I try to constantly encourage in him is he determines his direction. He doesn't. He's got a strength against the crowd mentality. And so even when he was young, like all of his friends, "Hey, Josiah, we're gonna go play basketball. All right, let's go play basketball. Hey, Josiah, we're gonna run over to the store and get some soda. Yeah, I'll be here playing basketball." He's just always been the one who's just like, "You do your thing, I'll do my thing," which I feel like makes him an influencer and makes him a leader. But if you're just one who's just constantly trying to catch the pulse of the room and then fit into it, you're going to lose.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been thinking about, like, I don't know. I feel like kids are really hard, and they also provide you with so many opportunities. I've talked about before how for the longest time my one was my neighbor, and before we ever had, any sort of conversations specifically about like what I believe or God or, any of that, her kids used to come over all the time for dinner, and my kids would just naturally be like, okay, let's pray. Yeah. And her kids never had been exposed to it ever. Like they'd never prayed before they ate dinner. It was just, and yet they were kids. And so they weren't like, oh no, we don't do that. Or this is weird. They were just like, okay, I guess at the Hyatt house we pray before we eat. Like, And so
they probably saw it on a show somewhere.
Yeah,
too, so
I don't know.
It's all right.
And so I just think about that even. Like my kids just invite people over and this is how we do things in our house. And sometimes kids are exposed to it. And I have to believe that God uses that in some way when they go back into their house and say like, oh, well, how was it? Oh, well, their parents didn't yell at us. That's cool. And we prayed before we ate, I don't know.
Well, that seems like I'm sorry, cop out, because it's the easy way. It works great if you bring kids into your own home, right?
Well,
and then you can kind of influence. If we could all do that, but there's a whole world out there. They're not all wandering into our home. Let me ask you this. What do you think? And if you're a church person, not church person, you can answer this question. What is the church person's biggest problem? That they are going out and hanging out with people and allowing them to influence them. That church people look just like everybody else because they drink as much and they watch Game of Thrones and they do all that. Or that church people are so separate or in their own world. Which is the bigger issue?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I actually I look at I would
feels
say,
like we're split right down the middle, and both were wrong.
I would say I mean I just feel like it's almost like it's individual to individual. You got the one who's just like, no, I'm just gonna hide in my closet and read my Bible, and make no dent in kind of a kingdom of darkness mentality. Like we're just gonna avoid them. But then you have a lot of people who are just like, no, we're just going to be real people, and I'm never going to go to the closet. I'm never going to spend time with God on my own time. I'm never going to go to church, or maybe I'm going to go to church, but it's just, I feel like both of those are pretty major. It'd be hard for me to pick one.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read this. Paul wrote this: though I am free, belong to no man, can make up my mind, do whatever I want. I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. Become all things to all men, so by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessing. Is that just something that Paul could do because he was strong enough and God was with him? Or is this a call for everybody to reach those people that are far from God in your neighborhood and the soccer field and work situations?
I think a lot of it's unique to Paul. I mean, I do think that the call in general is for everybody. The call to, hey, how do we win people? I mean, life is eternal, right? And we got this little window where we can reach people and we can influence people and help change lives. But at the same time, I really do think Paul was unique in his drive. He was, I mean, and I think that there are guys out there right now that are like that. But even in Paul's day, he was not telling everybody to do what he was doing.
That's true. But Jesus said, last words, go into the world, make disciples.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Go out into where? World.
Right.
Not stay in church and make disciples.
Yeah.
Be in Sunday school, or sorry, Leslie, invite them into your house.
Right.
Okay. I would just like to note that you said the title of this podcast is Counting to One.
Yes. All right.
So I'm just letting you know that if you have children coming into your house and you are speaking into their lives, that does count as one or two if they have 2 children, or 3 maybe.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, let me give you could probably tell that there's some like old lingering irritation with Christian people in me, because we started a church and there's so many people that just have differing opinions, but we started one in which if you walked in and you didn't know God, we would speak a language.
Right.
And that's kind of what 10 steps further is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And I would challenge people, if you're listening, let other people in, forward it on your Facebook,
Right.
put it on Instagram, because there are people that don't know God. They'll be able to listen to this and go,
Right.
man, they're not just talking about some weird religious stuff. I don't have any idea.
Right.
You're going to have an opinion about this, because
Yeah.
you want to know what to do with your kids. Do I just let them be with anybody? Do I just,
Right.
sequester them, or whatever? You're going to want to know that. So that's why we started all of this, everything that we do at this church.
Right.
But there are so many that it just becomes all about me, man.
Yeah.
Like, I just want more for me, more knowledge for me, more wisdom for me. I was in Costco. Saw a woman, doesn't go to our church anymore.
Right.
That's always a little sketchy for me.
Right.
Like, this is my day off, and I'm at
Yeah.
Costco, and all I want is free samples and 3 pounds of shredded lettuce. Okay, that's all. That's the only reason I'm in there. And so she comes up and finds me, and we have this really great conversation. And then she says, I stopped coming to church. Let me tell you why. Fantastic. That's great. It's Friday. I want to go
She
get...
probably felt just as awkward as you did.
I
Jess.
want to go get my chicken bake. Why do I have to have this conversation?
Right.
And she just said this. I stopped coming. I just need someone who's really in my face with the Bible. Canyon Springs is great for beginners. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to do? I wanted to defend myself and tell
Right.
why we started the church. And
Right.
life's not all about you.
Right.
And I just said, hey, thank you for your input. I appreciate it. Thank you for all that you did while you were here.
Right.
And I just said, okay, thank you. And I moved on.
Right.
But I feel like sometimes we'll get that criticism because we're still trying to communicate to people that don't know God.
Right.
And so many people come in and then they want it just to be all about them.
Right.
And you stop reaching out to the next one.
Yeah.
And you're right, Leslie. You can't reach them all. And at this season in your life, you got me. It could just be those kids that you're influencing. And I'm not
Right.
saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are a lot of people out there that really make it about them and their church group, and they forget about that other person at their work,
Right.
or the other person that they see on Facebook that was, in their high school.
Right.
Right.
I feel like there can be like two like worries maybe, and one is like, am I going to seem like a hypocrite if I know how this person lives and I'm like going out and wanting to spend time with them and be in a relationship with them? I feel like that's one thought that people might hesitate in going out to like seeing those other people. And my other thought is lost right now.
He's lost.
So I'm gonna go find that one.
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't plan that. No, I've lost my other one. But I definitely think hypocrisy is one. People like fear that they're gonna look like a hypocrite if they're spending time or engaging with people if they know where they might stand.
If they don't have it all together.
Yeah.
Like, I got to have it all together to reach out to the next
Yeah.
one, right? Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, if you ever are in San Diego and you go to our church, I will promise you right now, it's filled with hypocrites.
Right.
They're everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Here's how a lot of people define hypocrisy. Maybe I've done this before. People define hypocrisy as somebody who says one thing and does the other. That's everybody.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You will just say, man, I would love my kids, value my kids. I love my. You yell at your kids.
Right.
You get angry with your kids.
Right.
It just happens. I'm going to value my marriage, and you get in a fight with your spouse.
Right.
I would love to be honest, and yet you maybe twist a little of the
Put your best
facts a
foot
little
forward
bit.
every time.
Right.
Especially
right.
to the outsiders.
So here's how I don't believe that that's hypocrisy.
Right.
All right. Hypocrisy is when you say I am all this, but you're really not all this.
Right.
We just need to be real with who we are.
Right.
What we're trying to do in church is set a higher standard and say, look, this is what I think God wants me to do, and that's what I'm going for. I'm missing
Right.
all the time, but that's what I'm going for. Right. And it would be like setting a goal to play in the NBA and making it to playing at Duke for 4 years.
Right.
You're good. You have
Yeah.
some great memories, but you
Right.
never made it.
Right.
Well, on people's basis of hypocrisy, you would be a hypocrite because you said you're going to do one thing and you did not measure up.
Right.
Well, that's not the case,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So just be what I would say to that person, hey, be honest.
Right.
Like if you are wondering if people are going to look at your life and go, hey, well, yeah, you say you love God and you have margaritas and
Right.
your kids are foul mouthed or whatever. Go, look, man, I'm just trying.
Right. Yeah, I feel like too though, one of the things that is just recognizing that people are built so different. I mean that one of the things that Christians that we do is oftentimes we'll look at other people and we will judge their walk based on my calling.
Right.
And so whatever level of radical I'm willing to be, I'll judge you. If I'm bold door to door knocking every single day, what would really make this better? If you got out here and knocked on some doors with me,
Right.
but then for the one who's just not going to do that, then we're going to judge them based on, and one of the things is I've just, and we've had the privilege of being able to minister to people who are personalities just radically different from one another. And so what I would say to that is engage in the calling. Engage in the, Jesus said, go into the world, make all disciples. That doesn't mean everybody's going to China.
Right.
But somebody's going to China, and get involved in that process, whatever that means. Like help them go to China, pray for them in the journey to go to China, buy them something from China. I don't know. But I feel like it's important to recognize, because there are some people, especially even like as I've communicated some of the same ideas of just trying to rally people and get them excited and like get out there, and there's so much. One of the things that I've experienced is people often feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough because he's telling me I'm supposed to be doing so much more.
Right.
And,
or people feel guilty. I'm not going to Haiti.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or that person's doing it better.
Right. And you can be involved in. I had a friend that was in the he's in the Navy during the 80s, and then in the 90s his church started going to Russia. In the late 90s, started going to Russia regularly, and he says, "Man, I can be engaged. I can give to the people who are going, but there's been so much damage done in my mind as far as they were the enemy. Like
Right.
we hated the Russians, and I have this real I have nothing in me that wants to go. And maybe it'd be a healthy thing for him to go." But during that time, his thing was, I'm going to support other people because I believe in the cause, but I don't know that I'm called to
Well,
go.
you and I have been to Haiti.
Right.
Leslie hasn't been,
Yeah.
right?
I know you're really judging me for it.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
season, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to take us back to those original stories.
Yeah.
So Jesus hang out with people he's not supposed to hang out with. He answers them by telling 3 stories: 1 coin, 1 sheep,
Right.
1 lost guy.
Right.
All he wants us to do is count to 1,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is that 1 that you're praying for? Who is that 1 in your neighborhood?
Right.
When I did this, I kind of wrote some numbers of what our church is willing to do to count to 1.
Okay.
We sent somewhere in the neighborhood in the last several years, anywhere between 150 and 178 people on international missions
Right.
each year, which is for a church our size is ridiculous.
Right.
And I attribute that to our great God and my wife who's willing to say yes to him.
Right.
Do you know how much money that is?
No.
It's about $2,000. If it's just $2,000, and sometimes it's more, that means that people have spent $356,000 counting to 1.
Right.
Because there's 1 person in Haiti and 1 person in Uganda
Right.
and 1 person in Belize that our hope is to reach them. Okay, here's some other numbers. Okay, we have a houseboat trip. It's somewhere between the neighborhood of $85,000 and
Wow.
$100,000. And Chad will have, over 100 kids at these, 200 kids at these
Yeah,
things.
200.
Right.
And yet, last year, 15 kids made decisions to
Right.
follow Jesus. Was spent over $100,000 counting to 1 because those people are worth it.
Right.
Vacation Bible School is coming up. How much does that cost to put on?
I don't know. Not nearly as much as houseboats.
Right. I think it's somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
Yeah, that's
Right.
probably right.
Right. And we are also doing a sports camp, right?
Yeah.
Right. So a bunch of kids. Here's a really cool thing. Tell them like a second about that sports camp. It's really awesome.
Well, I also help with a nonprofit called Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, and they help children with special needs attend sports camps with typically developing peers. So kids with special needs can go. They get a one-on-one buddy. All of their needs are met. And for some of these kids, it's the first time that they ever get to go to a camp. And then on top of it, they have, their typical peers and siblings and everything. So Canyon Springs is hosting a soccer camp this year, and Fearfully and Wonderfully Made is teaming up with us. And so we will likely have somewhere between 20 and 40 kids with special needs who will attend the camp. So all of our Canyon Springs kids will learn how to interact and show compassion to kids with special needs, and our special needs kiddos will have the chance to see what it's like to be and really be enhanced by the opportunity of being with typically developing children.
It's amazing, right?
It's pretty awesome.
So between those two, it's probably going to be over in the neighborhood of $30,000 to run those camps, plus your salary and Joby's salary. That's a lot more than that. But really, for one, look, here's our challenge. Yes, have your home base, have your small group, have your church, have the people that you really rely on be involved in your life. But there's got to be one.
Yeah.
There's got to be one at your work and one at your school and one in your neighborhood, or one that you invite over to your house because your kids are buddies with them.
I hope everybody comments on that comment from Jack. Just saying it here.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know where your math skills are at, but God makes it pretty easy.
Right.
It's just one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's good.
All right. Well, did we get anywhere?
Hopefully 10 steps further.
I hope we got 10 steps further. Thanks for listening, guys.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. You can find the show notes for this podcast on our website, 10stepsfurther.com. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. If you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, join our Facebook group by simply searching 10 Steps Further. And if you're ever in San Diego, come visit us at Canyon Springs Church. We'd love to meet you.